All right, so we want to go ahead and get things kicked off and introduce Doug Sligting, our first presenter. And very, very exciting about Doug. I've had the opportunity to spend some time with this gentleman. And when it comes to marketing and anything around that, again, you are in for a real treat. So Doug is the founder and CEO of Ascent Practice Growth Strategies. He has spent his entire 25-year career in marketing, working for national agencies, advertising agencies, in addition to owning his own agency for 10 years prior to creating Ascent. He has worked with national clients such as Costco, Walmart, Henry Schein, and 3Com. Now in its 10th year, Ascent has the vision to realize potential through sustainable growth. This is accomplished as specialized teams apply their mastery of proven marketing systems, comprehensive planning, and dynamic creativity, striving for consistent improvement through analytics. And again, I think when it comes to somebody that just has a no-nonsense approach to understanding marketing and everything around it, I'm very, very excited and honored to introduce to you this morning, Mr. Doug Sligting.
Hi, it's actually really good to be here. I think the only problem is trying to follow up Kay. I was all like John laughing at many of the things she said. And then she puts all this pressure on me saying, hey, there's got to be humor in marketing. So I spent the last 10 minutes trying to think of marketing jokes, but unfortunately I don't really have any. So you're just going to have to live with what I've prepared in advance. And with that too, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I appreciate John's introduction. I am, I guess, kind of a marketing nerd, if you will. I've spent my whole life in marketing and trying to figure out the best way to do it. And really the last 12 years, all we've done is work with dentists. And we've tried to help them grow their practice and really see things correctly. And I also believe a lot in analytics, looking at data and how that data can give us answers and kind of see the truth of what's happening in a marketing situation. I'm going to share some of that data and those analytics with you today. We're also going to have this be interactive. So get your cell phones ready. We want to have you do an analysis of your own practice. And in a few minutes, we're going to have you go to a website, put in a little information. We're going to be able to pull up some data from Google on your practice and talk about it in relationship to what I'm sharing. So be prepared with that. So I'm going to go ahead and start my screen share now. So the title of my presentation is Dentists Aren't Looking for, Patients Aren't Looking for New Dentists Now, right? And actually that's wrong. It's been interesting. For a month or two there in March, April, there was a massive slowdown in what we've seen in terms of people looking for new patients. However, since then, it's actually been an uptick. What we've seen is that people are looking for new dentists right now as much as they ever have before. We're not seeing a slowdown. And in fact, during COVID, since April, we've seen a 24% increase in online search for new dentists. So more people are searching online for dentists. And when I say this, what we've done is we've looked at keywords and what people are searching, and we've seen an uptick in all the major search keywords for new dentists. And so people are looking a lot more, actually. The other part of this we've seen, and this is to me is actually even more impressive, an 18% increase in pay-per-click click-through. What that means is that all of our dentists who are running ads online have seen an 18% increase in the number of clicks to their ad in Google. And so, you know, when you're seeing that type of an increase in ad click-through, a lot of people are obviously looking online for a dentist. Between the increase in search and the increase in click-through, you're actually, it's probably more important than it ever has been to be able to be found online. And what we call this is we call this online visibility. You know, what is your online visibility? And I want to take a minute and talk to you about what good online visibility means to your practice. So first of all, if patients are looking for a dentist in your area, are they going to find you? So if we look at a practice with typical search volume, and what I mean by typical search volume are practices that are in areas like suburban areas, outskirts of big cities, etc. atypical search volume are really high traffic areas or really low traffic areas, but most dentists fit into this place of typical search volume. And so most of you probably fit that. Now, if you're in a really high traffic area, you know that, just add, it'll only go up, the numbers I'm sharing. And if you're in a really rural area, those numbers will come down a little bit. But for most of you, these numbers ring true. So if you are consistently found on the first page in top keyword searches, okay? If your practice, when people search, you consistently come up on especially the top half of the first page, but if you're consistently found there, that means you're going to see anywhere from about 7 to 15 new patients a month from local online search. Okay, when I say local online search, I'm talking about Google Local, the search that's attached to the map, right? So 7 to 15 new patients a month, every month, for being in just consistently on that first page in top keyword searches. Most practices need about 25 new patients a month. So about half of your new patients can just come from search if you're consistently in the top half of on the first page. Okay, so if you're sometimes found on the first page in keyword searches, so only a few keywords, you come up here and there, you're just not found as often, that drops to about 3 to 6 new patients a month that will come from local online search. Okay, so 3 to 6 new patients a month. That's a massive drop-off. Now, if you're rarely found on the first page in top keyword searches, you'll be lucky to get the 2 patients a month. Okay, so it makes a big deal. And in fact, I want to take a look at this in terms of revenue. What is it worth to your practice to be found consistently in online search? So let's assume an average annual per patient value of $750. That's what we found most practices have. Not most have, but that's the average when you look at all of the practices in the United States. Your average patient is worth about $750, okay? So if you're only getting 1 to 2 patients, the average of that would be 1 patient. That's $750 in revenue that you're generating through online search. And again, if you're not ever coming up, there's practices we see that never come up, you're just not getting any patients through search. So there's zero in terms of revenue. Now, 3 to 6 patients represents about $3,375 in average revenue per month. But if you have 7 to 15 patients coming in, I mean, you're generating over $8,000 in revenue every month. Now, it's annual revenue, so it's going to take you a year to collect all of that. But it's still, each month you're generating an additional $8,250 in new revenue to the practice. And that adds up, especially over the course of the year. You look at the lifetime value of those patients, it's actually way above that. It can be 5, 10 times that, really, if you look at the lifetime value of these patients that are coming in. So it's worth the investment to try to be found consistently in top searches, okay? So hopefully that convinced you of how important it is. Now, what we want to do, I mentioned that we're going to run a real-time report, and I've got up on my screen an address. It's hs-1.ascentpgs.com. Let me repeat that. It's hs-1.ascentpgs.com. ASCENTPGS.com. Okay, and I'm going to leave that address up. If you could go there on your phone, what we're going to be doing is we're going to have you input a little bit of information so that we can locate your Google My Business listing. We have to find your Google My Business listing because we're going to run some reports and some queries through Google to try to figure out how you're doing online. We're going to search several top keywords. We're going to search your competition, and we're going to run this report. So go ahead and fill out that little form there, put the information in, make sure it's correct, so that when you hit submit, you see your location. Okay, you'll come to a screen, the one I've got on my screen. It says River City Dental. Yours should say your location, and the address should be correct. If that's not correct, just click My Location Did Not Appear, and it will ask you a few more questions. Now, one of the things we're going to find, just a preview for some of you, Google doesn't like it when companies like ours run mass queries on their information. So we're going to run this, and usually several hundred can go at the same time. I know we had a ton of registrants for this. If for some reason yours comes back and doesn't work, you get an error or whatever, just try it again. It means we ran too many and Google didn't like it and throttled it or limited the number we could do. But run it if it doesn't work for you. It should work for most of you, but if there's some of you that doesn't, just run it again and it'll work as soon as we're not all trying to do it at the same time. But once you've selected your location, okay, just click on the next button and it will take a minute. It's gonna, like I said, it's got to run all these searches through Google. And then once it runs those searches, it's going to come back with some information on your practice. And I hope I've talked about this long enough that all of you have had the chance to run that and pulled up your data. I'm going to just remind you too that the address for this information, if some of you, I know some dentists are a little skeptical about doing this at first, and then at the end it's like, oh man, that's cool, what that information you pulled up, I wish I would have run that. So I'm going to keep that address up, the hs-1.ascentpgs.com, on the next few screens, so that as we go through this data, you can see what we're doing. If you were a little skeptical at first, you can run your own analysis and see what we're talking about. So with that in mind, the top box pulls up and it's going to show you where you rank in some of the top, in fact, in the top 5 keywords that are generally searched in dentistry, it shows you where you rank. So in my example here, under the word dentist, it says you rank 20th. That means on the local search, if I search for River City Dental, or I just search for dentist in Riverton, Utah, River City Dental will come up 20th for the keyword dentist, come up 21st for the keyword dental, 19th for dental office, and so forth. So you can see where you rank in Google local, okay? Now with that, when we take kind of the sum of all your top keywords and we average those out, the next button here, the next chart below shows you where you compare to the 5 top competitors in your area. So my example here with River City Dental, for all the top keywords, their average rank is number 17, which makes them the 15th easiest dentist to find overall. Okay, so there are 14 dentists that are easier to find in their area. Riverton Dental being the first, the easiest to find. They generally come up in the top 1 or 2 searches. And Stone Creek family, Riverton Heights, etc. So as you look at yours, it gives you a good sense of where you rank compared to those around you. So some of you are thinking, well, that's great. You're in the top 5, maybe number 1 or 2. Others of you are getting bad news right now. You might rank fairly low in this, but this gives you the truth of where you are. Now remember, if that's really your average rank is below 10, it's 1 through 5 really, you should be coming up in a lot of important searches, and you are probably generating good new patient flow through search. Okay, the last thing I want to point out here is just the number of competitors in your area. What we do is we look at how many competitors are vying for space, or visual space, I guess, in search. And if it says 60 plus, that just means there's more than 3 pages of dentists in your area that are competing for visibility. If there's less than 60, it'll give you the actual number of dentists. And then if you're a specialist, then it's almost always less than 60. But if you've got an area that's got over 60 dentists, you're in a highly competitive area. And it means that it's harder for you to rank. Because go to the next, just scroll down a little bit. This graph kind of puts it into perspective. It has the top 30, unless you're ranked lower than 30th, but it shows you all those gray dots represent other dentists in your area. You can see the green one is the top one. Hopefully it's you. If not, you're somewhere along that chain. And basically, in order to move up and be seen more easily than people in front of you, you have to outperform them online. Google has to see you as more worthy to rank above them, right? So you've got to be doing things that allow Google to see you and improve over your competitors. Because it's never just about what you do, it's about what they're doing also. They're doing things, you're doing things, and if you can't outperform them, you don't move up. So a lot of practices will, be doing, in fact, I'll bet all of you listening have some form of online something going on, some search engine optimization, or you're doing something, but yet you're getting this report and you're saying, well, there's a lot of people in front of me. It just generally means that those in front of you are doing more, have a more sophisticated approach, and have been able to show Google that they deserve to be ahead of you. And so to pass them, you've got to do the same thing. And we'll talk about how to do that in just a minute. But hopefully that graph gives you a good insight into where you are. Okay, next, we're going to move a little bit. Hopefully now you've got a sense of where you rank and how visible you are online. Let's take a look at your reviews. What this does, this takes a look at your Google reviews. I mentioned we're going to be running all these reports through Google. And it shows you where you compare to the top review practices around you. A lot of times they're the same ones as the top visible practices. Sometimes it's different. But you'll see that my example here, they have 15 reviews where the top practices have well over 100 or even 200 reviews, which isn't helping them. Google looks at reviews as one of the things that they measure to determine if you deserve to be in front of other dentists. And so if you don't have a large quantity of reviews, Google reviews specifically, they're not going to, in many cases, have you pass other dentists in your ranking either, because people like well-reviewed businesses. And Google knows that, and they want to show people what they want to see, and they want to see well-reviewed businesses. So if you're not actively generating Google reviews, it's going to hurt your online presence. Plus, and I'll go over this, people like reviews for various reasons, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Also, scroll down just a little bit now to the graph. This graph, again, I'm a visual person, and it helps put it into perspective. That vertical and horizontal kind of dark lines running through the graph, or darker lines, they divide the average in terms of number of reviews and the average in terms of quality of reviews in your community. And the last place you want to be is where my example is, and that's in the bottom left quadrant. You want to be as far up and to the right as possible. You want to be above average in number of reviews. You want to be above average in review rating. If you're not, it's hurting you. And so again, very easily you can tell kind of where you're at in your community, and it gives you some either incentive to keep your great rating, or if you're not rated well, you need to improve it. All right. Now, let's move on with one last thing I want to show you in this. And so scroll down a little bit, and that's your cost per click. The other thing we measured is cost per click in your area. Now, in this example I'm showing, the cost per click in Riverton, Utah is $8.92, meaning every time, if you run an ad through Google, every time someone clicks on their ad, it debits $8.92 from the allotted budget that you put in there. The reason this is important is this gives you, well, two things. It lets you know if pay-per-click is a viable campaign option. Generally, anything under $7, if you came up and you're under $7, pay-per-click is probably a good option for you for patient growth. Okay, if it's over $7, that's going to depend on your per patient value. If your per patient value is really high, then you'll be okay. $8.92, you probably have to have a per patient value of about $800 or $900 in order to make that work. So you can kind of get a rule of thumb there that for every dollar you're spending on your pay-per-click, you kind of need to be about that in times 10 in order to get a good return on investment. So if you're at $10 per click, you need about $1,000 per patient value. Hopefully that makes sense. The other thing this tells you, though, is when you've got a higher cost per click, if yours is coming up high, it also means there's probably a lot of dentists employing more sophisticated methods online. Because the reason the number goes up in an area is because of the competition. Lots of dentists are doing the pay-per-click. The more dentists in an area do pay-per-click, the higher it drives the price. So if yours comes up really low, that means that you're not in a competitive area. There aren't many dentists buying ad space with Google. So if it's $2 or $1.50 or whatever, you might be the only dentist in your area. And if yours comes up with an NA, that means no one in your area is buying ad space, at least for those keywords. That means it's going to be really cheap for you to do some marketing. And again, depending on the amount of search going on in your area, it's probably a good idea. So this, again, helps us. So if you've got a really high cost per click, then again, you know you're in a really competitive area. It just means you're going to have to do more in order to be found online. Okay. So last thing, just one more graph. This kind of puts it in perspective. The space in between the orange and green line is generally where you're going to have to spend in order to achieve a new patient goal. So for example, if on the bottom you go to the number 6, and then you follow the line, vertical line up above that, you'll notice between the green and the orange line is anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000. So for the cost per click of $8 per click, $8.92, almost $9, it's going to cost you between $2,000 to $3,000 to bring in 6 patients, right? So if your patients are worth $1,000 each, that's $6,000 in revenue. It's probably okay to spend $2,000 to $3,000 to bring in $6,000 worth of revenue. That's a pretty good ROI. Especially over 2 years, that's going to be a good investment. But if your per patient value is half of that, and you're bringing in $3,000 and spending $3,000, you probably should avoid pay-per-click if your per-click price is so high. And you can see why. If your per-click price was half of this, then it'd be half of this to bring the patients in, half this cost, and that's why it makes sense. But you can kind of see that range. And the reason there's a range, obviously, is because there's a lot of factors that determine what it's going to cost to bring a patient in. Okay. Hopefully that's clear and that's helpful. And hopefully you like seeing that, because most practices have no idea what their per click price is. Most practices really don't know where they rank in local search compared to other dentists and who's top, and have taken time to look at that. And so with that in mind, let's talk about improving or maintaining where we're at. Because after going through that interactive portion there, you're either in one of two spots, right? You're either pretty happy with where you're at. You came up really nice and you want to maintain, or you're in a position where if you're not ranked really well, you should want to improve, okay? It's an important thing for every practice to have a great online presence, okay? So if you want to maintain, it isn't as simple as just whatever you're doing is going to always work either, because other dentists around you want to pass you. You've got to do things to make sure you're always have the best information for Google, and you look the most relevant to Google, so they keep you in those top spots so that no one can pass you. And if you want to improve, you got to do more than those behind you. So let's talk about the 3 key ingredients in online visibility. There's basically 3 things you should always be working on to improve your online visibility. The first one is website content. When Google is deciding where to rank you, they scan your website. They're scanning your website from time to time. A good SEO company or search engine optimization company will invite them to scan the website. And the website content, like for example, if it's got certain keywords in it, and Google sees those, then when people search those keywords, it wants to put your website up for those keywords, okay? Second thing is review generation. I mentioned this a minute ago, but think about it when you search for you're going to go out to eat, or you're looking for a local business. Do you search for businesses with reviews, or do you search for businesses? Do you like to see the businesses with no reviews? You like the businesses with reviews. We like to read the reviews. We trust the reviews. Everybody does. Google knows this. It doesn't want to put businesses up at the top that have very few or no reviews. It wants to put the businesses at the top that have lots of quality reviews. And so review generation is key. And then the third thing is traffic. If nobody visits your site, Google knows that. Google knows exactly how many people see your site, visit it, how much time they spend on it. They know everything going on online, right? And if you're not generating traffic, and it's not just about your site, it's traffic in general to any anything online that represents you, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, but that traffic is really important to Google, kind of for the same reason as the reviews. Nobody wants to visit sites that nobody visits. We all like the popular sites. We like the sites that everybody likes to visit. So that traffic is really important to Google. And the thing you have to remember about these three key ingredients is it's not just about you having good content or good reviews or good traffic. You have to have better reviews and more, traffic and better content than others around you to rank above them. It's always what you're doing compared to what others are doing. So going back to that analysis we just ran, if you're in a really competitive area, you have to have a more sophisticated approach, period. You can't just do something and assume it's going to work. And if you've also got something that's just kind of a set it and forget about it mentality, even if it worked for a time, at some point, you're going to get past and start dropping. So it does require consistent efforts. Okay, so let's go through the remainder of my time here. I want to go through each of these briefly and just talk about some solutions. So for website content, I mentioned it has to be keyword rich. So the visible copy you can see on the website, for example, you have to have good keywords throughout it. If you don't have good keywords throughout your content, you're going to be in trouble. Also, the metadata, what that is that's the descriptions of things like the photos. You can't see it. Google can see it, but you can't. When a programmer or developer puts in a video in your website or a photo in your website or any type of content, they put meta tags on, little descriptions, and all those things have to be keyword rich as well. And even the code needs to be written in a way that Google likes, where it can easily look at that code, right? You've got to have a website that really knows how to build itself correctly. And then finally, you've got to work with an SEO, a website company that also can provide SEO. It's generally a mistake to have a different company build your website and do your SEO also. Or then have it, so one company builds your website, a different company does your SEO. Generally doesn't work that well because of, when a website company, when an SEO company or search engine optimization company wants to optimize a site and it's using someone else's code and metadata and copy, you can see why it's just not going to work as well. Now, the great news is Henry Schein actually knows all of this stuff. It's why we're talking about it today. And they offer ideal website solutions through Sesame and OfficeSite that naturally do these things. Their visible copy is always keyword rich. They know how to do the metadata and the descriptions and build the code correctly. They offer the SEO along with the website. And it helps them move you up the rankings in keyword searches and important keyword searches and get you found, which again leads to patience. And I think that's an important thing is you have to have companies you can trust. So that is super critical in terms of your website content. Okay. Next, let's talk about review generation. Reviews are really critical. 86% of consumers read reviews. I mentioned earlier, I can't believe that number is not higher. Maybe my source material's old, but who doesn't read reviews when looking for a new business, a local business? 78% of consumers trust online reviews as much as personal recommendations. And for younger demographics, it's over 90%. So if you don't have good reviews online, that's killing you. And then this one's important too. 40% of consumers only take into account reviews written within the past 2 weeks. So you get on, you go to find a dentist, they've got 100 reviews, but the last one was left 6 months ago. That doesn't look good. It doesn't matter you got 100 at that point. It's a process of continual generation and renewals. So again, just like with the websites, Henry Schein offers ideal solutions. Okay, Demand Force and Dentrix Patient Engage are both solutions that generate reviews for you. If you want to improve the amount of reviews, quality of your reviews, you should employ these review generation solutions. They're going to help you build those up. Okay, all right. Let's go to the last thing that I want to talk about, and that's traffic. I mentioned that Google prioritizes websites with traffic, more traffic, through pay-per-click. Okay, pay-per-click is actually a great way to bring in patients, like I mentioned, but it's also a great way to generate traffic through to your landing page, which should be part of your website. Google will see all that. That's awesome. Also, external links, okay, through directories and other things that you can build with search engine optimization. And I mentioned that online directories are a great resource to help build traffic as well. People visit these online directories. And one of those examples is WebMD. WebMD is a place where if you can, for example, build an optimized listing, that helps with your visibility online. Office Site and Sesame, again, they offer pay-per-click and through search engine optimization can build external links. So these solutions and all these things are offered through Henry Schein. If you haven't taken the time to look at these solutions, whether it's, again, Demandforce or Dentrix Connect, Sesame, Office Site, or WebMD, all of these things are built to optimize your online visibility and help you be found in more competitive areas. And even in the not competitive areas, obviously, as well. And, I know, too, that Demandforce and Dentrix Web Connect do more than just generate reviews. And I think Andrea Gallimore is going to be talking about that later, go into some of the other things. But they're worth it just in terms of what they do for the reviews. So let's have kind of a quick review, and then I'm going to open it up to questions. So patients are looking for dentists online right now, more than ever, actually. Online search has gone up, and if you're not being found, you're missing out on a lot of opportunity. So there's 3 things you need to solidify. 1 is your website content. Number 2 is your review generation. And number 3 is your traffic. Okay, using those solutions we talked about, that can solidify all of those things and help you be found online and take advantage of all the search that's going on right now. So I'm going to open that up to Q&A. I put my email address at the bottom of the screen as well. If anybody has specific questions about any of the content you got, the data you got when running the app online as well, you can reach out to me there. All right, let me stop sharing. Okay, so John?
Yes. How you doing, Doug?
Good. Are there any questions that have come up that?
Yeah, we've got some great ones, and actually, before I get into the Q&A, I wanted to let you know just a lot of great feedback about that assessment. I think such a great resource tool, and I think, as you mentioned to everybody, again, just one of those things that are out there where you don't know what you don't know, right? If you don't go through this process and really kind of understand how this whole universe works, it can be challenging. So I think a lot of great feedback just on the assessment tool alone, but some really good questions. One of the ones we had was, the practice is rural, and is there a way to make the analysis cover a larger mile radius?
Yeah, the way the analysis works is it generally covers the whatever city your Google business listing is in. What I would recommend doing is finding if there's a dentist in like a nearby town, run it on their practice. Just put in their information. You don't have to have their email address. You can just put yours in there. Do try to put their name in there because that helps find the Google business listing. But you run it on theirs, and it'll show you how competitive their area is as well. And then you can kind of look at yours and compare it to theirs. But yeah, we can't just extend the radius because of the way we're running those through Google, and it's using your Google business listing, but you can actually find other people's Google business listing and run it on theirs.
Perfect. All right. So another question is, how can we track patients coming from online local search?
So what I would recommend you do, and the way we do it for our clients, the reason we know that those return on investment figures of how many patients you're going to get from being on consistently on page 1, is we put a dynamic call tracking number on the website. And a dynamic number is different than just a regular call tracking number. Most companies that do call tracking now have them. And what they do is they kind of follow, this is a little creepy, but it's what's happening online. they follow a person around while they're searching and going to different pages. Someone could come to your website, leave your website, call you later, and we would know kind of what happened and been able to follow them around. So it really is about that dynamic call tracking that allows you to do that.
Excellent. All right. And we had a couple people asking about this in regards to NF. Like, what does NF mean? Does NF mean we should definitely invest in ad space? And then we had another one come through on the NF side. What does NF indicate on the CPC cost? So I think a combination of the NF acronym.
NF means not found, meaning nobody is currently running pay-per-click in your area. So if you have a good enough search volume, so if you're in a super rural area, you'll probably get an NF and you still shouldn't do pay-per-click. However, if you're in an area where there's a pretty good amount of search volume, it's a little more competitive, and you get an NF, chances are you're going to be able to get a super low per-click price, like less than $2, and it would be very, very smart to run a pay-per-click campaign in that case. So if you're in a more competitive area and you got an NF, consider yourself kind of lucky. It just means no one's running ads and you could really corner that market.
Awesome. All right. And then what is average versus rank on the online rep?
Yeah, so average is where you average in keywords. So like, for example, if you come up 12th for the word dentist and 9th for the word dental in search, your average would be halfway between those. So what would that be, 11? Or 10 and a half, actually. So your average would be 10 and a half. So when you see your average, what it's doing is it's looking at the top keywords and taking an average of those. The rank is where that puts you in comparison to other dentists in your area. So you might have an average of 17, but that makes you the 7th best dentist or easiest dentist to find, because other dentists were looking at their average and comparing it to rank you. Does that make sense? Did I explain that well, John?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure they'll put in the chat, if they've got some more questions. And I know the HS1 team is there to do that. And then last one is, it says, what is the lifetime patient value? I don't know if maybe that was meant to be lifetime patient value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have found, and it's with patients that come in through online search, especially online search, they tend to be sticky patients. That's one of the really important reasons you want to have a great online presence. Patients who come in because you're running a special tend to be less sticky, right? They're maybe one and done patients. Whereas if they come in through search, it means they're genuinely looking for a dentist and dental relationship in more cases. So when you talk about their lifetime value, they're going to come back. So their annual value might be worth $750, but they could come back for 10 years. Right? So now it's $7,500 is what that's really worth to the practice. We tend to measure it more over 5 years just to be safe looking at that. And we know there's going to be some attrition. So those numbers are a little more difficult to calculate. But you can still look at, if you bring in 10 patients and your per patient value is $750, lifetime value of that's still going to be, $20,000 plus at least for what that investment was.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Doug, again, great job, great presentation, a lot of good feedback, a lot of comments. If for whatever reason, everybody, we didn't get to your question, like we said, the Henry Schein One team is there. They're on the chat, grabbing all the questions, and we'll be certain to get back to you. I did want to reference, we're going to go ahead and take a quick little break, but before we do, we're going to come back at 12:15. Very excited. Our next presenter, Dana Johnson, is going to be with us. Before we do, just a couple notes. As I mentioned before, there's a resource center that's been created on the page. So if you scroll down, when Doug and I are finished, below the information about each course, there's a great resource center there. All you simply need to do is just click on the logo for any of those particular brands, and there's some great resources there that you can download, go through. And primarily, when I think about, Doug, a lot of the content that you shared, and you referenced it, we've got, Henry Schein One page, we've got Office Site, Sesame, and WebMD, some of the, different solutions that tie, that are somewhat connected in regards to some of the issues and some of the things that you talked about in regards to search and all those issues. So we want to make sure everybody go ahead and check that solution. Also, if you have any more specific questions about anything, that Doug mentioned as from a solution perspective, the HS1 team just went ahead in the chat and put a link right in the chat that you can go ahead and click on to put in your information and what it is that you're interested in, where you would like to get some answers for, and they'll be able to reach out to you. So, Doug, again, thanks for your time and always for your insight, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks, John. It was great.